Welcome back to Merkle and Plummer's Beginning with New Testament Greek. In the second chapter, we're going to be covering first declension nouns. These are the topics that we are going to cover in this chapter. Some of them are similar in English and some of them are totally different in Greek. First off, let's take a look at the number. So this is very self-explanatory because in English, we change a word into a plural by adding s or es. In Greek, you're going to be changing first declension nouns from phone to phonai and cardia to cardiae. So in your vocabulary for chapter 1, all of the vocab that you had were first declension nouns in the feminine gender. This time in chapter 2, you are getting those vocab words that are masculine words in the second declension, which you'll be using in the next chapter. Now, we don't have grammatical gender in the English language. However, sometimes some of our words will change depending on if they're speaking about a male person or a female person. So for example, the word host becomes hostess, steward becomes stewardess, actor becomes actress. So you can see how sometimes those changes are made. But in Greek, this happens for every single noun, has either a masculine, feminine, or neuter gender. Another important part of nouns is the case. And we do not have case endings in English. We do have some changes that will happen, but for the most part, this is a brand new area that you'll be working with. And so part of this transition in learning Greek is to begin to do brain surgery, where you are literally rewriting pathways, neural pathways in your mind. You're creating spaces for these case endings to help you learn the language. So what are cases? Cases are the parts of the sentence and how they're functioning. So in English, the way a noun is functioning in the sentence is mostly determined by word order. So here we have the apostle rebuked the demon. We see the apostle is the subject of the sentence, rebuked is the verb, and the demon is the object. So this is happening. The apostle and the demon don't have any differences. If those words were switched, they would then become the subject and the object. But in Greek, the word order is not as important as in English. It doesn't determine case. This is different from English. In Greek, you're going to get case endings that tell you how the noun is functioning in the sentence. So we have nominative, genitive, dative, and accusative, and you're just going to want to remember those in order: nominative, genitive, dative, and accusative. It's not that we don't have these cases in English, it's just we don't have case endings that go with them. However, for personal pronouns, we do have something that is a little bit similar. We do have changes in a specific word that impact what it is functioning as. So the nominative case is the subject. So for the personal pronoun I, you would say I or we in the plural, and that is a change that would happen in the nominative case, which is the subject case. Genitive is the possessive case. So if you were going to say my book, that would be a genitive because you are the possessor of the book. And in plural, you can see that it changes to our book. Then you have the dative case, which is an indirect object case, and that is me, to or for me, or to or for us. And then in the accusative case is the direct object case, and me and us is the same. So in Greek, in the nominative case, this tells you that this word is the subject of the verb. So whether it occurs before or after the verb, the noun that is closest typically is the subject of the verb if it's in the nominative case. So here you can see two nouns. You have he phone, the voice, and cardiae, hearts, which is the plural of cardia. However, if you were going to talk about someone's voice or someone's heart, you would use the genitive case. And that changes the ending that goes on those words. So here you would have tes phones, of the voice or voices, and cardion, of hearts. This answers the question whose. So a lot of times you will see the word of added in the translation when you're using the genitive case. When you use the dative case, you're going to be adding the word to or for. And I remember that by shortening dative to dat, D-A-T, when I'm writing out my paradigms. And I remember dat and starts with T-O, starts with to. So dative adds a to or a for as the indirect object. So te phone and cardies, to or for in the voice, to for in hearts. And our last case is the accusative case. This is used for the direct object of the verb. So te phonein is the voice and cardias is hearts. This looks very similar in the English to our nominative, but you'll know that it's the direct object by the change in how it's spelled. So now you have an overview of what the cases are. Let's take a look at how the spelling changes in the morphology and show you your paradigms. So while word order is important, it doesn't necessarily play the same role in English as it does in Greek. These case endings will help you determine the function of the noun. So you're going to want to learn about the stem and the ending of a word. Nouns have a stem and an ending. And in the first declension, there are two different types of ending, the eta pattern and the alpha pattern. So let's take a look at how this pattern changes in each of the cases for the eta pattern. The eta pattern is typically those words that end with an eta. And your nominative form is going to be the one that you receive in your vocabulary each time. So your nominative singular is your vocabulary words, and you will need to memorize the article along with it. But I'll talk about the article in just a little bit. So we'll ignore the article for now. But for here, you see phone is your nominative singular form. Next, you're going to go down and see genitive, phones. So you've found the stem there is the phone, and then the eta is added on in the nominative. In the genitive, you're going to see an eta sigma. In the dative, you're going to see an eta, but it's got an iota subscript on it. So that's how you can tell that the nominative and the dative sections are different. And that's a very important small little dot that tells you something is changed about this word. Then in the accusative, you have phonein. So you have eta, nu. Into the plural, you have phonai. So you have that alpha iota diphthong added at the end. Then you have phonon. That is your genitive plural ending. And then you have phonais. You have the alpha iota sigma. And then lastly, in the accusative plural, you have phonas. So these are your eta pattern declensions. This is the most prevalently used of the endings. There's another pattern of first declension, feminine nouns, that's called the alpha pattern. These are words that end in the letter alpha, and the plural forms are identical, and the singular forms are very similar to the eta pattern. So you're going to see instead of an eta, you have an alpha. Instead of an eta sigma, you have an alpha sigma. Instead of an eta with an iota subscript, you have the alpha with the iota subscript. And where there was an eta nu, now you have an alpha nu. And again, the plural form is exactly the same. For the most part, if a first declension noun ends in an eta, it's going to use the eta pattern. If a first declension noun ends in an alpha, it's going to use the alpha pattern. However, there are some words that end with an alpha that use the eta pattern. And you'll need to know that alpha pattern will be used anytime that their stem ends in an iota, an epsilon, or a rho. And we use the alpha pi rule, the apple pie rule, to help you remember that you always use the alpha pattern with these letters. So if it ends in rho, iota, or epsilon, these three will take the alpha endings, while the others will take the eta endings in the singular. In the plural, both of the morphologies are identical for eta patterns and alpha patterns, and so there's no worries about changes there. You have the I, on, ace, as, all throughout the plural in the first declension. However, you may have noticed that the genitive singular and the accusative plural both end in the as. So how can you tell them apart? Well, there are two ways. First is context. A lot of times when you are reading in Greek, you will see what is necessary and you will understand how to interpret it. But the best way, I think, is the article, where sometimes there are differences in the declensions and the different ending patterns. The article doesn't change. The feminine article is always going to be tes in the genitive singular and tas in the accusative plural. So that is the best way, the most for sure way that you can determine the difference. So now let's talk more about the article itself. In English, we have definite and indefinite articles. However, in Greek, there is no indefinite article. So there may be a noun on its own without any definite article. And for these, you could translate it a voice or an hour. We have two indefinite articles in English, the a and the an, and those change based on the word. In Greek, if you see a noun without a definite article, you can translate it as a or without a article at all. In English, we have one definite article, the. Greek has three different definite articles and different spellings of that article. So in the masculine, feminine, and neuter forms. We've been talking mostly about the feminine form, but we'll look at all three. So the masculine form of the article is ha. The feminine form of the article is he. The neuter form is ta. Now let's look a little bit deeper in what forms the feminine article can look like. So the feminine article declines with an eta pattern. So the nominative singular is just he. Notice that rough breathing mark there at the beginning. And the rest of the article is just the endings added with a tau at the beginning. So you have tes, te, teen for the singular. In the plural, you lose that tau again, and you just have the ending, hi. But it is the rough breathing mark. And remember, when you're using rough breathing marks on a diphthong, it's going to go on the second letter. So in your article, you have hi in the plural, ton, tes, and tas. And the accent on first declension nouns tends to stay on the same syllable as in the lexical form. However, if the ultima is long, the accent will move to the penultimate syllable. So we have here aletheia, and then in this dative version of the word, the accent shifts and moves. That iota subscript is pulling it down. So then in the dative form, you have aletheia. So the genitive plural is always accented with a circumflex on the ultima, cardion. Now let's talk a little more about conjunctions. Conjunctions are indeclinable words. They don't change, and they're very important. They're used to link words and phrases, clauses in the larger discourse. De, kai, and men are all coordinating conjunctions. They communicate a parallel relationship between the words, phrases, and clauses that they link. Something you'll notice as you begin reading is that de is postpositive. it's always going to be the second word in a phrase or a sentence. It's never going to be at the very beginning. But when you translate it into English, you should always put your translation for the word day at the beginning of the sentence. So, but, now, And let's look a little more about what parsing is. If you're asked to parse a word, it means tell us what you know about this word. So you'll need to start getting familiar with the term lexical form, gender, case, number, translation. So the lexical form of a word is the nominative singular form that you will be given in all of your vocabulary. The gender is the masculine, feminine, or neuter of the word. The case is going to be the nominative, accusative, dative, or genitive. And then the number is going to be singular or plural. And then your translation will look something like this. For our word cardian, this is from the word cardia, and this is a feminine, accusative, singular, translated a heart. Finally, let's take a look at your vocabulary. In this book, your vocabulary is going to be mainly words that you will be using in the next chapter. So all of the words for your vocabulary in chapter 2 are going to be masculine words. So you'll see that ha, that Omicron with the rough breathing mark there at the top. These will tell you, that article will tell you that this is a masculine word. So here you have ha adelphos, which means brother. Philadelphia can be a word that helps with that. Then you have ha anthropos, man, human being, husband. Anthropology is a word that is similar. Then you have ha theos, God, theology. So this is a word that you will see all the time in the Bible. Then you have ha cosmos. This is a word that means world, universe, adornment. This is similar to our word cosmos or cosmetology or cosmetics. Then we have ha kurios, Lord, Master, Sir. Next you have ha logos. This means word, message, account. You may have heard this word logos, but it is ha logos. This is similar to logic, theology, psychology, if that helps you remember. Next you have ha nomos. This is law, principle. Theonomous is a word that can help you remember. Next is ha uranos, heaven, sky. Uranus might be a way to remember that one. And then you have ha huios. Make sure you're getting that rough breathing mark in when you are when you're pronouncing this word, ha huios. This means son or descendant. And next you have ha Christos, Christ, Messiah, anointed one. And this section of vocabulary, you're going to notice that there is a different article. These are all neuter vocabulary words. So this is a neuter word with the ta. So when you are memorizing your vocabulary, make sure that you memorize the article along with it because the article never lies. This was telling you what gender this word is. So ta ergon means work, deed, the word ergonomic. Ta evangelion. This means good news, gospel, are words for evangelistic, evangelical. Ta hieron, seminary, the sanctuary or temple. Ta Simeon, this means sign. I remember this one because it has an I in the word. It has an iota, so sign, semiotics. There's another word that you'll get that's very similar, but remember that sign has an I. This one is ta teknon, lastly, child, son, or descendant. I hope that this has helped you to understand the concept in chapter 2 a little bit better.